Yeah, so let's welcome back to this lecture 4 on the stochastic resource allocation problem. And in this, we are going to discuss the risk aversion model. So let me begin with a recap of our previous formulations. We had in fact done three formulations, 1, 2, and 3. The first formulation was about maximizing the expected profit subject to the constraints on the activity and the resources, and of course the level of activity has to be non-negative. As we said that this is a linear programming problem, and in this particular case the drawback was that there was no notion of the risk associated with what we are doing. As I gave you an example of the investment problem, and she said that some investment may be highly profitable, but at the same time very risky, very volatile because its variance is high. The prices can go up also or crash also for certain stock. Then this formulation would push your investments there without worrying about the risk. So the formulation 2 said that we want to minimize the risk. This X transpose Vx is nothing but the square variance of your profit, and the investment criteria or the resource allocation criteria is the same: Ax less than or equal to B, X greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, since variance is non-negative always, this matrix V enjoys a very nice property which is called as positive semi-definiteness. So the variance matrix V is called a covariance matrix, and X transpose Vx is always greater than or equal to 0 for X not equal to 0. As I said earlier that positive definite matrices and semi-definite matrices play a very important role in optimization. This is the first positive semi-definite matrix that we have encountered, the covariance matrix. It's a n cross n matrix, right? Okay. Now, what's the drawback of this formulation? This formulation ignores profitability desire altogether. As I gave you an example, fixed deposits are give you low return on investment but zero risk, and such a formulation will put all your investments there and totally kill your risk appetite. So this one does not care about your risk aversion, formulation 1. The formulation 2 does not care about your risk appetite at all. So we said we gave a third formulation where we said that we will minimize the risk but also keep a cap on the aspiration level. That means I don't want the average profit to be below my aspiration level. So this is kind of a fix between the formulation 1 and 2. Yet I would say that there is no good control on Z aspiration level for us. So therefore this is also not the neatest formulation. To create a more neater formulation, I need to understand the human behavior a bit more properly. So for that purpose, now I am going to develop a risk aversion model, and that is based around the following concepts from economics: the utility function, the law of diminishing marginal utility, and the risk aversion and the risk aversion constant. So first let's start with what is a utility function. So a utility function is my profit or money that I am accruing, the Z in rupees or dollars, whatever you like as your currency, is on the x-axis, and its utility, which is a function called u of z, I am plotting it on the y-axis. I am going to restrict this between the numbers 0 and 1 for convenience. That means the maximum utility for this money here, its x-axis is money after all, the profit is the money. The maximum utility can be 1, and the minimum utility is 0. So utility function u of z has a value is always in the interval 0 to 1. The other thing is this function, usually I'll sketch one function here. This is an example of a utility function. Okay. Now this function has a characteristic that it is monotonically increasing at and 0, u of 0 is 0. So what I mean to say here is that if you don't have any money, you don't have any utility, and as you have more money, the utility also starts increasing. So to give you an example, suppose you have only 1,000 rupees, right? Then what's the utility? You see some utility like this here for it. It's very that those 1,000 rupees are very precious to you because your food and everything else is going to come out of it. Requirement is going to come out of it. But I mean, you would be much better off if you get 10,000 rupees, per month instead of 1,000 rupees per month. Then you can have better clothing, you may rent a house. So you see that your utility has increased with this 10,000 rupees that you have got. But now assume that I give you 1 lakh rupees per month. Okay, so I give you 1 lakh rupees per month here. So obviously for 1 lakh rupee per month, you have much more utility. You can afford a car now. Probably you may think of a bike or a car to buy. You may start going to high profile restaurants or good restaurants in and around vicinity of IIT, the Hiranandani and all that. And so your utility has increased. Now suppose I make this thing to 2 lakh per month. Now instead of your utility for that money value or utility for that money will increase further. But as you can see, the increase in the utility, even though I have doubled, actually this line is not the correct line. I have almost doubled your money somewhere here. The utility has really not increased that much. I mean, between 1,000 and 2,000 rupees or 1,000 and 10,000 rupees, the utility that you perceive in terms of your existence is so high. Afterwards, you start trying to live a good quality life. Then you start reaching into a kind of a luxury mode. And then after that, it's like I can afford this car, or I can afford that jewelry, or I can go for this fancy watch or a fancy mobile. But so the utility is improving, but utility is always increasing, but the marginal utility is not increasing that much. So therefore we say that the utility function follows law of diminishing marginal utility. I mean to say that if you look at gradient of u dash of z1, then this gradient is greater than z1, I'm sorry, is greater than u dash of z2 when z1 is less than z2. So utility always keeps increasing, but marginal utility keeps reducing. Such a function follows the law of diminishing marginal utility. And so now this is, and we have normalized this utility function between 0 and 1. So essentially what you have done, you have said that my money that I have got, I can translate it into a measure called utility through a function called utility function, which is a monotonically increasing function and follows law of diminishing marginal utility. So one nice function which I am going to use in today's lecture is uz is equal to 1 minus e to the power minus kz. You can check that u of 0 is 0, u tending to infinity, the function will go to 1. And if you look at u dash of z, it is k into e to the power minus kz, and therefore it meets the requirement of this diminishing marginal utility. So all these properties are satisfied by this function, and this is a function that I am going to use today. This constant k here is usually called a risk aversion constant. Okay, to understand this risk aversion constant, let's say this I have plotted with k equal to, assume that this one I had plotted with k equal to 2. Now let me plot another one with k equal to say 3 or 4, something like that. So you would find that the function will increase faster and then start flattening it up. Its knee point would be hit much more early. So suppose you are somewhere here, your worth is somewhere here, and you have a small, you due to randomness, your profit may go delta z here, or your profit may go down opposite direction of delta z on the other side. So delta z, it could go on either side. Now if you check here, the loss of utility, if you lose, is much more than the increase in the utility. Your perceived loss is much higher with the larger k value. On the other hand, with a lower k value, it almost looks proportionate. I mean, I mean to say is that with k equal to 2, suppose you see that you are going to gain for let's say that I put z equal to +1, and it appears to you that you are going to gain by 0.1, and this is for k equal to 2, and with z equal to -1, it appears to you that you are going to lose minus say 0.1. So you seem to be losing a bit more. But now when I go to k equal to 3 and I suppose my profit increases, I may be gaining only about 0.05, but if I lose the profit by minus 0.1, seems to be that I am going to lose by minus 0.1. Almost perceived loss is double. Under such a situation, I would say that the k equal to 3 person is much more risk averse. He's not willing, he won't be willing to take chances as much as is a person with a constant k of 2. So therefore, the risk appetite of an individual or even an institution for that reason could be captured through this risk aversion constant. Now with this I come to the formulation 4. Now that economics has given us a much better way of handling this behavior, modeling the human behavior, we can create the next formulation, which is that we want to maximize the mean utility of our allocation. We want to choose that allocation, that portfolio, that X star, which maximizes the mean utility. Now go back to the first formulation, where what had I said there? I want to maximize the mean profit. Actually, it's not correct to say, no, we have learned more, we have become more wise. It's not just profit that we want to maximize. As a living individual, what we want to maximize is the utility. If I perceive that I want to maximize the utility from that I derive from it. If I can't derive much, I mean, It's obvious, right? So let me proceed with this notion that I want to now maximize the mean utility. And why do I say mean utility? What's the reason for mean? Because z is a random number, so u of z also becomes a random number. So therefore, just saying that maximize u of z or utility does not make sense. What makes sense is to say that I want to maximize the expected value of u of z. So let me assume a probability density function for the profit of or the worth z, and let me assume it to be normal with mean z bar and standard deviation sigma. Now what is that mean z bar? You have already seen that for a portfolio X or a allocation X, z bar is C bar transpose X. Also recall that sigma square, the variance, is given by X transpose V of X. This probability distribution function here I have written for the normal distribution. It's a bell-shaped curve, right? I mean, if you remember, this is a bell-shaped curve and looks like phi of z is equal to 1 by under root of 2 pi sigma e to the power minus half of z minus z bar by sigma whole square. So just to sort of jog your memory a bit here, see this is how a normal distribution looks like, So this is phi of z. Here the mean is 0, and let's just say that sigma is 1 here. Now you know that the area under this curve is integral minus z2 plus z phi z dz will be 1. Now when I have some other mean and some other mean mu z bar and some other standard deviation sigma, then it still is a bell-shaped kind of a curve, but it looks like this now here. So what's the relationship between these two curves? Essentially the relationship between the two is that the second curve is obtained by normalizing this random number between 0 and 1. So what do? You subtract the mean from z bar from the z, then divide it by the standard deviation, and then you get this this PDF for the normal distribution with mean z bar and variance of a standard deviation of sigma. Okay, now once you know the probability density function, then you know the utility. So what's the expected value of this? Expected value of u of z. Expected value of u of z is u of z into phi of z dz from minus infinity to integrated from minus infinity to plus infinity. So utility function is 1 minus e to the power minus kz into phi z dz from minus infinity to plus infinity. Now if you look at the first term, that is going to be phi z integrated from minus infinity to plus infinity over dz, right? So that's the first term, and the second term is obtained by substituting the phi z value here as 1 by 2 under root of 2 pi sigma into e to the power minus kz plus half of this particular argument coming here, and the minus sign is taken out common as dz. Now integral phi z dz from minus infinity to plus infinity is just the area under the bell curve, and that is 1. So this one comes very straightforward. And then I have here minus of 1 by under root of 2 pi sigma, and this what appears like a complicated expression here. So what I am going to do here is play a small trick. This half I have taken out common first of all. So minus half comes out common. So this half has been taken out as common. So this term comes here, and this kz comes with a 2 kz now. Now for this 2 kz, I want to convert it into, I want to, because I see a square here, I want to convert it into something of the form a square plus 2ab plus b square form. So for doing that, first thing that I do is I want to use this variable a, z minus z bar by sigma as a, and then figure out what is going to be the b. So to this z, kz, this kz which has come here, I subtract minus z bar and add plus z bar. And because I want a square has a sigma sitting down here, I divide it by sigma and multiply it by sigma. So then now with this thing, some a, or rather I have called it here as alpha, what do I get? I get this of the form minus of half of alpha square plus 2k alpha into this e to the power minus kz into dz. Because I have subtracted minus z bar, so I have to add plus z bar, and therefore that has to come out again common, and this 2 will cancel out with this 2, this sigma will cancel out with this sigma, and therefore this minus will stay, and therefore I get this minus k z bar coming out here. Now if you have got this 2k alpha, 2k sigma alpha sitting here, and I want to convert it into a perfect square. So this is already my a square, this is my 2ab. So then I just need to add a b square and subtract a b square here, and that b is 2k. So that b is k into sigma, whose square is k square sigma square, minus the b square, again k square sigma square. And so when I do that, this part here converts into a perfect square like this, and what remains here has to be absorbed along with this minus kz bar as minus half of, so this minus into minus becomes plus here, k square sigma square. So some arithmetic manipulation is there, but I hope you are following it. You know, there is that saying which says no pain, no gain. So some labor is definitely required. Okay, now you see that this, what is z bar? Z bar is c bar transpose x. What is sigma square? It is x transpose vx. Both of these are not a function, are like a constant when you are doing integration over dz. So therefore I take them, I bring them out, I bring them out here, out of the integration, because for any given portfolio x, z bar is known and sigma square is known, and there is no integration going here over dx. Please understand that there is only the random number is z, the random number is not x. We have discussed this earlier also. So therefore this whole thing, this term can be taken outside of the integration bracket, and now you are left with this particular term here. Now this particular term here is actually, if you look at it carefully, is like z minus this z minus z bar. This sigma is multiplied with k sigma, so minus of k sigma square by sigma and then whole square. So this is again another normal distribution. This is nothing but another normal distribution with mean shifted from z to z minus k sigma square and standard deviation remaining same at sigma. So then this whole thing here becomes essentially the area under the normal distribution again from minus infinity to plus infinity, and that is just 1. So therefore the expected value of the utility becomes just 1 minus e to the power minus kz bar minus of sigma half of k square sigma minus half of k square sigma square. Now our goal is to maximize this expected profit, right? This is the expected value of u of z, and I want to maximize this. Now the maximum that it can go is of course 1. So for that, what I should try to do, I should try to minimize this second term. But the second term is of the type e to the power minus y or something like that. So if I want to minimize e to the power minus y, what should I try to do? I should try to maximize the y. In other words, I should maximize kz minus half of k square sigma square over, and what is the minimization? What can I change? I can change my allocation x. So converting this into a minimization problem, if you recall, I had told you that max of f of x is same as minimization of minus of f of x. So I minimize the minus of this, which is half of k square. For sigma square I write x transpose vx minus, for z bar I write minus k c transpose, I'm sorry, not z, but minus c transpose x, subject to the constraints ax less than or equal to b, x greater than or equal to c. Now this problem is actually called as a quadratic programming problem. Unlike the linear programming problem, here the objective function is quadratic and the constraints are linear. These problems are both linear programming problems and quadratic programming problems have nice algorithms to deal with them. We feel happy when we see that. Okay, now how does this problem work? Okay, let's say that someone has a risk aversion of 1. Then this problem would be like minimize half of x transpose vx minus c transpose c bar transpose of x. Now let's say another person has a risk aversion constant k equal to 2. Then his problem is, so for k equal to 1, our problem is minimize half of x transpose vx minus c bar transpose of x. And now someone has a risk aversion, more risk averse, so his k equal to 2. Then k square will give you a 4 here into x transpose vx minus c2 times of c transpose of x. Is it not? K square and k. So this is what happens. So therefore this, what it means is the risk aversionness or minimizing the variance part, its weightage is now with respect to the previous part increased by 4, while the weightage for improving profit is only increased by 2. So therefore, this problem will give you more. This problem, when you solve the second problem, you will get lower sigma and lower z bar. The first problem will give you k equal to 2. The first problem will give you higher sigma and higher z bar. How does that, one more point that I want to mention here is, see, when we say we want to minimize this, minimize half of x transpose Vx minus c bar transpose of x, then to minimize this, we want to reduce the variance or the risk as much as possible. It's a positive number, so we want to reduce it. And the second term here, we want to maximize the profit c bar transpose of x. So because profit is a positive thing, so if you subtract 100 and if you subtract 500, which is better from the perspective of minimization? From the perspective of minimization, subtracting 500 is better. So therefore, we would what is happening here is two simultaneous actions are happening in this formulation. We are trying to cut down on the sigma square or risk and simultaneously increase the profit, which is c bar transpose x. And the trade-off between the two is controlled by this factor k. The weightage for the variance reduction is k square, and the weightage for improving profit is k. Now typically this k, the risk aversion constant, is between 1 to 3. So that means that as the risk aversion increases, more emphasis is in this trade-off, more emphasis is given to reducing the variance, and higher importance is given to lower importance is given to maximizing the profit. Now this risk aversion can change, right? Like for example, like today, tomorrow, if you go into market with a good job, probably, and you are looking at your investment, creating your investment portfolio, you may be willing to take a risk aversion for constant of k equal to 3. But close to your retirement, maybe, or when you have become 50 plus or 60 plus or something like that, then when you go for your investment, you may find that you are now much more risk averse. So earlier, sorry, and when you went into market, now you are less risk averse, so you are willing to take risk, so you chose k equal to 1. But when you are close to retirement, a person close to retirement, he goes into market, he may want to say that my k is 3. That means make sure that my risk is less, even if profit is cut down is okay. So that's how, with institutions, with people, with nations, with organizations, we can choose this value of k and create a resource allocation around it. Is this not formulation beautiful? All right, let's stop this lecture here, and we'll take a couple of more examples in the next class.